Hey everyone, this is a quick video to explain the patterns behind the forms of subjunctive Spanish verbs. Now, in class, what we realized was that while the book explains a little bit of the logic behind forming subjunctive verbs in Spanish, it doesn't give enough explanation to leave us understanding why some of the verbs we encountered were boot verbs in the subjunctive and others were not. And so as we realized what looked like inconsistencies in the examples, it just provoked a lot of questions. Are there any patterns behind why, some of these are boot verbs and others are not? And thankfully, after doing some more digging, I believe I have some solid conclusions that can be broken down into three simple rules. All right, so it all goes back to chapter 6. And in chapter 6, we talk about stem changing verbs. Like, for example, pensar. So pensar is an AR verb, and it experiences a stem change from E, I'm doing this in a mirror basically, from E to IE. And so you have an infinitive form, pensar, with the stem PEN, and then you have a yo form with pienso with the stem PIEN, so that E went to IE. All right. There's also stem changing verbs that we encountered in chapter 6 that go from an O in the infinitive stem to a UE in the yo stem. So poder to puedo. All right. And a third type that we encountered in chapter 6 was stem changing verbs that go from an E in the infinitive stem, ped, in pedir, to an I, like pido in the yo form. All right, so three types of stem changing verbs. There are the E to IE, the O to U, and then the E to I. It turns out that only two of them are going to be boot verbs in the subjunctive, while all three of them are boot verbs in the infinitive, or in the indicative. So let's take a look at the two types that are going to be boot verbs in both moods, the indicative and the subjunctive. The ones that are going to be boot verbs in the indicative and subjunctive are the E to IE stem changing verbs, and then the O to UE stem changing verbs. So let's take a look at examples of those. So E to IE, first of all, pensar. As you look at pensar, you'll see that it's a boot in the indicative. Pienso, piensas, piensa, pensamos, pensáis, piensan. And in the subjunctive, piense, pienses, piense, pensemos, penséis, piensan. To review, in the subjunctive, you always get your stem from the yo form in the indicative minus the O. So look at the yo form in the indicative, pienso, drop the O in your stem, piens, comes down here, and then you just attach the subjunctive endings a, ace, etc. But if it's a boot verb, whether it's in the subjunctive or in the indicative, what's going to happen to the nosotros and vosotros stems? They're going to come from the infinitive. So drop the AR or the ER or the IR, depending on what kind of verb it is, and that's your stem for the nosotros and vosotros if it's a boot verb, so pens. So if you have a stem changing verb that goes from E to IE, it'll be a boot verb in the indicative and the subjunctive. Same as a stem changing verb going from O to UE. That'll also be a boot verb in both. So take a look at poder. We have puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, podes, pueden. Subjunctive, take the yo form, drop the O, puede is your stem. Take that down here. Pueda, puedas, pueda, pueden. You got your, or puedan. You've got your boot there, but then you have the podamos, podais, that comes from all the way back here, the infinitive stem. Why? Because if it is an O to UE stem changing verb, then it's going to be a boot in the subjunctive as well as the indicative. But, and this was the cause of a lot of my confusion, as I was looking at the examples, I was like, why on earth are those boots and then pedir is not? So pedir is going to be an E to I stem changing verb. And it turns out, as far as I can tell, the E to I stem changing verbs are not boots in the subjunctive. they just follow the normal rule, which is as simple as when you're in the subjunctive, you just get your stem from the yo form in the indicative. So drop the o from pedo, and ped is your stem all the way through. Excuse me. The way I came to this conclusion was, first of all, as I looked at other sources, one thing I found is that other people don't like dealing with the subjunctive. It is hard. Spanish overall is really easy, and this is about the hardest thing I've encountered in it, really, other than just like idioms and stuff that are just hard to memorize. But the other thing is that I found a source that was saying that the e to ie and o to ue stem changing verbs are boot verbs in the subjunctive. I didn't find a source that just flat out said that e to I stem changing verbs are not. But what I did was I went back to chapter 6 and I went through literally all of the examples, and there weren't that many, but I went through all the examples of e to I stem changing verbs they provided in that chapter, and I looked up their conjugations online in the subjunctive, and sure enough, none of them were boot verbs. They were all just, like this one where you got one stem all the way through. You could say brick verbs if you want, because it's just like a brick of all the same stem, no shape to it other than the rectangle. So that clears things up a lot. Is it going to be a boot verb in the subjunctive? Well, it will if it is a stem changing verb that goes either from e to ie or o to ue. That's basically what you need to know. There is something else to know, which is what if it is one of those stem changing verbs, but it also has a crazy yo stem that doesn't appear anywhere else, like tener. So you have almost a boot here. It's more like a shoe of tn as your stem in the orange, but then tang is unique to the yo form. And then these just, they come from the indicative, like they would in a boot verb, like a true boot verb. So, but in the subjunctive, all of them are just coming from the tang. So, tenga, tengas, tenga, tengamos, tengais, tengan. There's a rule for that, which I can sum up this way, and none of the sources I read said it quite like this, but here's my go at it. No matter what type of verb it is, if it has a unique yo form stem, like tang, not appearing anywhere else, then that's going to be the stem all the way through the subjunctive present forms. And that explains why in our book, on page 209, you've got a whole bunch of verbs, like conocer has the yo form conozco, and decir has digo, hacer has hago, poner has pongo. All of these are just going to use that yo form stem through all of the different forms. It's not a boot verb for any of them. None of them are boot verbs. So you have like yo conozca, conozcas, conozca, conozcamos, conozcais, conozcan. All of them are just going to be using that conozc stem because it's unique to the yo form. All right, so hope that clears it up. The only other thing that you need to know is just watch out for that note on the top of page 209 that explains why some of your nosotros and vosotros forms are a little weird. So take a look at that one real carefully, and thankfully you have some examples of that. You have mentir on page 208. It has a weird nosotros and vosotros form. So does dormir on page 208, and the note on the top of page 209 will explain that to you. All right, hope that clears things up, and have a great week. See you next Thursday. Bye.